Hi everyone, Mr. Freeman here. Today's a pretty sappy day, so we're going to boil some sap, make some maple syrup. So stick around and learn how it's done at my house in my spare time. So let's talk sap. Sap comes from trees. Maple syrup comes from maple trees. This is a pretty big maple tree. This is a sugar maple. Range in size where you can tap, you have to start with 10 inches in diameter or more. 14 is better. This is about 2.5 feet in diameter. You can hook up 2 buckets to this. So let's take a look at how this works. We start by drilling a hole with our drill bit, similar to the ones at school, only this one is very, very sharp. That way it can drill into the tree quickly. Then we tap a tap in the tree, or a spout. That spout is aluminum to hook up to our aluminum buckets. Looks a little something like this. Before it goes in, it tap in about 3/4 of an inch, right up about to where my finger is. So let's take a walk in our woods, check out a sap bucket, see just how full it is. These 2 we emptied yesterday. We heard one running last night, right up here. Let's see what we got. So we have our bucket. I have a 5-gallon pail. That's how we haul our sap back to the shack. So we'll take the bucket off the tree and dump it into the pail. We got some, about a 1/2 gallon or so. Put the bucket back on the tree and on to the next pail. We've kind of progressed to tubing. Let's go take a look at some of our tubing. In my system, the blue line itself is called the main line. Pretty much the only lines I have that are main line are blue. The line you see coming off the blue line we call a lateral. That'll either go out at a 90-degree angle, or in this case run up beside the main line. If I kind of duck around my lateral line, check out a drop. The drop comes from the tree, connected down to the lateral line. The spout in here is a little different. No bucket to attach to it, so it's just as simple as that. This also gets tapped in about 3/4 of an inch. Same drill bit. They go about 1.5 inches deep. Does not harm the tree at all. Takes 40 gallons of sap, roughly, to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. So there's quite a bit of boiling involved. Creates a lot of steam. Sometimes I have to gather sap from pretty far away. That's when I'll be using my RTV with a tank on the back to help pump it out. Pump it into the tank, and then I can return back to the sugar shack with it. I have 4 lines, 4 tanks. One tank is way out in the middle of nowhere. By bike it's a 1/2 mile, so I'm guessing about the same by RTV. There's the tank. course, I have to return all the way back home to pump it into the sugar shack. We brought the sap back to the sugar shack, hooked up the tank to our pump. Our pump is hooked up to a feed line that goes into our stainless steel sap holding tank. This holding tank is connected to the reverse osmosis inside our sugar shack. There is a filter, as you can see. We're pumping sap in right now. There's a filter connected to the feed line so that it filters out any impurities, bugs, sticks, anything else that got in the sap when we were pumping it out of the tanks or dumping it out of buckets. So this is the first step in cleaning the sap before it goes into the reverse osmosis. Okay, so let's take a walk inside the sugar shack, see what we see. Looks like we're boiling. I see steam coming out the cupola on the roof. Looks like we got our wood all set to go. This is an evaporator that uses wood to heat the sap, make the syrup. We have the evaporator with a hood. The hood and all these stacks vent all of the steam, the water that's evaporating, up into the cupola and out the roof. So this is the head tank. Sap from the RO, concentrated sap, comes into this tank. There's a sight level on the right side that tells me how much sap is inside the tank at any given time. There is the current level. Sap exits the tank through this pipe. This pipe comes down and feeds the evaporator into what's called a float box. This float box has exactly that. It's a float that's connected to a lever. There's a lever, and if I push down on the float, it allows more sap into the float box. The float box controls the level of the sap inside the evaporator, and that can be changed. Let's walk over to the right side of the evaporator here. Check out the different pans. The pan in the back here is called a flue pan. The reason I have a flue pan in the back is because there's flues down inside that create more surface area for the sap to boil as the fire flows underneath it. As you can see, we've got a good rolling boil, lots of steam, 2 channels. Sap comes in on the top of the screen, flows to the back of the evaporator. Back of the evaporator, there's a little hole between the 2 channels, so the sap then flows back to the front of the evaporator. Sap is pushed through based on density. The less dense the sap pushes the more dense sap. So basically at the top it's much less dense, almost like just regular sap, 2, 4, 6%. And then over on the bottom here, it might be up to 10, 14, 16%. That flows out of the flue pan through this elbow and into the syrup pan that you see in the front here. The syrup pan also has 3 channels. So the sap comes in, syrup, or close to syrup I should say at this point, comes in on the right side, flows to the front of this box on the right, through a little channel in between. And that goes, it's pushed to the back of the syrup pan. Another opening on the side over to the left side of the pan. And then on the left side here, I can't really hold because it's really hot, there is what currently probably is close to syrup at this point. Let's take a look at our temperatures. I have a thermometer in the sap pan, or syrup pan rather. I also have a thermometer in the stack in the back for the heat, where the exhaust is. So the stack temperature is 677 degrees. Syrup temperature is 220.3. It's getting very close to syrup. I did check it a few minutes ago. It's not quite there yet. Once it does become syrup, I'll pull it off on this draw valve, open it up, and then all the syrup will flow into the draw-off tank right there. The reason that we have something called a flue pan is because there are flues built into the bottom of it. So inside you can see got a nice fire going, a little smoky. What happens though is that fire heats up the pan underneath, and then if you look closely, way in the back, there are the flues. So the heat goes in between each one of those flues. Just gives more surface area for the fire to boil the sap. So what we have here is a hydrometer. That tells us if the sap is the right density to draw off. There's a red line on the hydrometer, and at the current temperature, the red line has to be hovering right around the level of the sap. You can see it's above it, so we have plenty of syrup. Syrup is good. That tells us the density, 60.6. And right now that density is just about 61, so it's a little higher. If I back up, come over to the evaporator, you can see I'm drawing off right now. And my thermometer must be off a little bit because it says it's drawing off at 225.3 degrees, which is really hot. I don't think I want to touch this or try to drink it right now. Now comes the fun part. After sap is finished, comes out of the draw-off valve into my draw-off tank. I have a filter press that's hooked up to the draw-off tank. This filters out any impurities, anything else that's left in the syrup. Syrup, when it's boiled, creates sugar sand or niter. It's just residue from the boiling process. So this filter press presses the syrup through filters, and then eventually that leads into my bottling tank. Currently there's syrup heating up in the bottling tank. So in order to bottle, we have to heat the syrup back up to 190 degrees. It's called hot packing. We take our pint jug. I have a little presser foot on the floor that allows my hands-free bottling system to work. So it opens a valve that allows the syrup into the container. So I'll get that started. Basically the 190 degrees kills any bacteria that might be in the bottle. Anything else that's in there that doesn't belong. Once it gets up to the top, let go of my foot. Sometimes I get a couple drips. Then I'll place the cap on tight and it seals. First pint maple syrup. We also have glass bottles that we use. I preheated this one too because of the temperature. If it's too cold, it will not sterilize the bottle. Place this under the valve, put my foot down, fill the bottle all the way to the top, and then let it cool. It takes about a couple hours for the syrup inside the bottle to cool down. That's filled up, cap goes on with a little twist. Now isn't that a beautiful thing? Pour some of that delicious maple syrup over some nice French toast. And let's not forget about the bacon. Some good old maple syrup on vanilla ice cream. Or you can put a little dollop in your hot chocolate. Just don't put too much. Tastes yummy. So, what is maple syrup? Well, maple syrup is 100% all natural, 100% organic. No artificial sweeteners, colors, no high fructose corn syrup. Many, many nutrients that are good for you. Tastes pretty darn good on French toast, pancakes, ice cream, even dab some in some hot chocolate. Really good stuff. So, there you have it. Hope you learned a little bit about my maple syrup production. And go out and get yourself a pint. Try some. think you'll enjoy it.